Imagine this. You're sitting across the table from the most dangerous chess player alive. Every move you make, they've already calculated 5 steps ahead. That's not a game. It's business.
Right.
And in business, just like in chess, the difference between winning everything and losing it all comes down to one thing: strategy. Patrick Bet-David argues that if you can't see your next 5 moves, you're already losing.
They're behind the curve.
So the question is, are you the player or are you the piece?
Hello, everyone. Hi, all. I'm Emma, and I'm incredibly excited today to dive into a topic that, well, it truly impacts every single one of us every single day. Welcome to Book Podcast Zone.
And I'm John.
It's great to be digging into this one.
And welcome to Book Podcast Zone. Joining me today for this really extensive strategic deep dive into PBD's, well, it's a really important book, is the expert mind we trust to kind of break down these complex ideas and pull out the stuff you can actually use.
Yeah, happy to be here. Because this framework, it's not just, rah-rah motivation. It feels more like a manual, almost, for how to actually think about achieving, well, market dominance, as he puts it.
Okay, so our mission today, let's lay it out. We want to give you the ultimate shortcut. We're going way beyond just a summary. We're actually going to tackle the entire framework of your next 5 moves.
The whole thing.
Exactly. Structured precisely around those 5 essential strategic pillars that PBD identifies for achieving, wealth and real lasting leadership.
So if you're listening and you're maybe tired of constantly reacting, always putting out fires,
Right.
and you want to shift into being proactive, having that strategic mastery, actually sculpting the market instead of just, surviving in it.
Then this is for you. We're basically charting that course today.
Yeah, it's about moving from playing checkers, maybe, to playing that high-stakes, multidimensional chess he talks about.
Yeah.
And the foundation, the absolute bedrock of this whole strategic approach. PBD makes it clear it doesn't start out there with the market.
Well, no, it starts inward.
It starts with you, the self, which brings us straight into move 1. Master knowing yourself.
Okay, move 1. Let's unpack this because it's foundational, like you said. It becomes really clear straight away that PBD sees identity not as some, philosophical navel-gazing.
Not at all.
It's the raw fuel. It's what drives that relentless ambition he talks about. He actually calls for a raw confrontation.
Yeah, that phrase really jumps out. A raw confrontation. It's this moment of reckoning, isn't it? Where you have to face the gap, the distance between who you actually are right now
The reality.
and who you must become. Your boldest dreams, as he puts it.
And it's that gap, that tension, that's the engine.
That's exactly it. What's fascinating here, I think, is that the drive he's talking about, it isn't just fueled by, simple optimism or positive thinking.
No, it seems deeper.
It's often fueled by something intense, something articulated. Pain, maybe, or a past failure. He demands you get crystal clear on your identity because that clarity defines the chasm, right? Between your current reality and those huge dreams.
So the tension is the key.
Yeah, that tension, the discomfort of knowing that gap exists, that's what creates this, non-negotiable spark for action. If the dream isn't crystal clear or if you kind of smooth over the reality.
The tension's weak.
Exactly. The tension's weak, the drive stalls out. You just don't have that burning reason to push through the inevitable crap that's going to come your way.
I think maybe the most powerful idea here, for me anyway, is that emotional pivot he describes. Leaders who take a significant setback, a real failure.
Something that might crush someone else.
Right, and they transform it into their defining purpose. It becomes the why. Can we maybe look at a real-world U.S. example of this, someone high profile?
Sure, let's think about that. Imagine maybe the founder of a major U.S. tech firm. Let's say their first venture was a spectacular public failure, burned through cash, layoffs, maybe even bankruptcy. It wasn't just a financial loss.
No, it's public humiliation too. Ego takes a hit.
Huge hit. The pain is personal, it's public. Now, PBD argues that the leader who becomes truly strategic doesn't just lick their wounds. They internalize that moment. They dissect it.
Raw confrontation again.
Right. And they convert that pain, that failure, into an oath, almost like a vow. Okay, my mission is now defined by fixing the structural weaknesses, the bad assumptions, whatever it was that caused that failure. Never again.
Never again will I make that mistake or let that happen.
Precisely. And that vow, that never again, it becomes the absolute bedrock of their new identity. It dictates who they hire next time, how they approach risk, their long-term vision, everything. The failure isn't forgotten. It's encoded into their strategic DNA. Think about someone like Steve Jobs getting ousted from Apple. That pain, that sense of betrayal, undoubtedly fueled the fire for NXT and Pixar, and ultimately his triumphant return. It shaped his later leadership style, for better or worse.
So the identity forged in that fire becomes the stable anchor,
Mm.
which makes sense, especially today. Markets are so volatile, right? Geopolitics, economy constantly shifting.
Total chaos sometimes.
So if your external strategy has to keep flexing and adapting, your internal identity, that core who, needs to be rock solid, absolutely clear.
Perfectly put. Because if you don't define your who, PBD warns that the external chaos will define it for you. And usually that definition comes with, well, pretty crippling consequences for your business and your life.
Okay, that's a powerful start.
It really sets the stage.
Like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
All right, so once you've grappled with Chapter 1 and you have some clarity on who you want to be, that ideal future version of yourself, the second step in Move 1 is, well, it's about applying the same rigor you'd use for business analysis, but turning it inward.
On yourself.
On yourself. This is what he calls the intense self-audit. You have to treat yourself like the single most important product you possess, the one product you absolutely have to sell day in and day out.
And like any product, it needs constant refinement, upgrades.
Continuous refinement, exactly.
Okay, but an intense self-audit, honestly, that sounds exhausting. And maybe a little bit demoralizing. I mean, you're actively looking for flaws.
Yeah, it does sound tough, and it is tough. You're deliberately trying to uncover your blind spots, those weaknesses, those bad habits, those areas of ignorance that maybe the market hasn't punished you for yet.
Yet being the key word.
But inevitably will if you don't address them. So how does PBD frame this, not as just, beating yourself up, but as a surge of empowerment? That's the interesting part.
Right. How does finding flaws empower you?
The empowerment comes from the realization that identifying a flaw is the very first step, the necessary first step to eliminating a liability. It's like finding a security vulnerability in your own system.
Okay.
If you discover, through honest auditing, that you actually lack expertise in, say, financial modeling, or you realize you consistently avoid difficult conversations, or you tend to micromanage your best people, you've just found a major constraint on your own growth and your company's growth.
A bottleneck.
A self-imposed bottleneck. And the moment you identify it and decide to address it, maybe you hire a coach, you take an online course, you force yourself to delegate more, you immediately feel a competitive edge returning. Because you've just removed a speed limit you didn't even know you had set for yourself.
Ah, okay. So the empowerment isn't from the flaw itself, but from the act of finding it and the potential to fix it.
Precisely. It's an immediate return on investment in self-awareness. You feel more in control because you are more in control of your own trajectory.
And he also talks about dissecting motivations here, right? Your why. How does that fit into the self-audit?
It's critical because your motivations evolve. What drives a hungry 25-year-old entrepreneur? Maybe it's the raw need to prove doubters wrong or just make a lot of money fast.
Yeah, that intense, scrappy energy.
That's inherently different from the motivation required for, say, a 50-year-old CEO running a large, established enterprise. At that stage, the motivation has to shift, doesn't it? Maybe towards building a legacy or having a broader societal impact or ensuring the institution endures beyond them.
The why needs an upgrade too.
That evolution is mandatory for sustained success. And this whole concept, this continuous self-refinement, is incredibly relevant right now in the, 2025 tech-driven economy we're in.
Absolutely. The pace is just relentless.
Look at the pressure on leaders in places like Silicon Valley or on Wall Street. If you stop learning, if you stop adapting your skill set, the market doesn't just move past you in years, it's months sometimes.
It would become obsolete fast.
Scary fast. So leaders in those fields, they're expected to treat continuous skill acquisition almost like a premium brand upgrade for themselves. They have to continually invest in understanding new mental models.
Like what specifically?
Well, maybe it's getting decent at prompt engineering for generative AI because that's changing workflows everywhere. Or maybe it's really understanding the implications of decentralized finance, even if you're not directly in fintech. Or mastering the tools and techniques for leading highly effective remote or hybrid teams.
Things that weren't even on the radar 5 years ago.
Exactly. And they're not just reading articles about it. They're hiring specialized coaches, executive consultants, joining peer groups. Not necessarily because they feel like they're failing right now,
But to stay ahead.
but because maintaining that leadership edge requires constant high-level iteration of the product. And the product is their own leadership capability, their decision-making skills, their ability to anticipate the next shift.
So the bottom line is, if the product becomes obsolete,
The business is doomed, or at least severely hampered. It's like you're in a relentless, continuous beta test of your own skills and relevance. You got to keep debugging and upgrading.
Wow, okay, that's a demanding perspective.
It is, but PBD argues it's the reality for anyone playing at a high level.
Like subscribe and share for more update. All right, so move one starts with identity, then the self-audit, and it sort of culminates in this really critical high-stakes choice. PBD frames it as a strategic alignment phase.
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road on all that self-knowledge.
Are you going to maximize your potential, your wealth creation path, by building your own thing from scratch, the entrepreneur? Or by thriving, leading, innovating within the structure of a larger organization, the intrapreneur?
Exactly. This decision has to leverage everything you supposedly learned about yourself in the first 2 chapters, your risk tolerance, your strengths, your weaknesses, what environment you actually thrive in.
And what I think is kind of brilliant about PBD's approach here is how he works to remove the cultural bias. The assumption that being an entrepreneur is automatically the superior path, the cooler path.
Right. There's this mystique around the founder, but he pushes back hard on that. He points out that many, many highly effective, highly successful, and very wealthy people possess skills that are actually best amplified inside a larger structure.
What kind of skills are we talking about?
Maybe someone has absolute operational genius. They can take a complex system and make it run like a Swiss watch. Or they have an incredible knack for scaling things, taking something from 10 million to a billion. Or they're masters of navigating internal politics and securing huge resources. Or they have deep, specialized technical expertise that needs massive R&D funding.
Things that are hard to do bootstrapping on your own.
Very hard. And some people, frankly, they crave more stability. They want defined parameters, clear goals, access to colossal resources. They don't want the chaos and uncertainty of starting from zero. And PBD says, that's okay. Own it.
I think we often underestimate the impact and, frankly, the wealth potential of a truly skilled entrepreneur. They can shape industries, manage huge teams.
Oh, absolutely. Their market impact and their personal compensation can easily dwarf that of many struggling small business owners who took the entrepreneurial route, maybe for the wrong reasons.
Let's make this concrete.
Yeah.
Compare 2 successful archetypes in the current U.S. market using PBD's lens.
Okay. On one side, you've got the high-level executive, maybe a VP or C-suite leader at a tech giant like Google or Microsoft, or a major financial institution like JP Morgan Chase. That's the entrepreneur.
Right.
Their edge. They get to leverage billions of dollars in capital, existing infrastructure, established brand recognition, massive market reach. Their skill might lie in navigating that complex matrix organization, influencing decisions, allocating those vast resources effectively. They're steering the proverbial supertanker. It requires immense skill, but a different kind.
Okay, so that's the entrepreneur. What's the contrast?
On the other side, picture the successful entrepreneur, maybe someone who bootstrapped a company, perhaps a highly successful regional chain of, say, specialized manufacturing plants, or a niche software service. They built it from the ground up.
Total control, total ownership.
Total control, yes, but they also carry all the primary risk. They had to wear every single hat at the beginning: sales, marketing, finance, HR, product development. Their skills might be more about vision, risk-taking, sheer hustle, assembling the initial team.
Very different profiles.
Very different. And the strategic point PBD hammers home is alignment. If your honest self-audit reveals you have a relatively low tolerance for financial risk, or you absolutely hate bureaucratic processes and internal politics,
And then forcing yourself down the entrepreneurial path just because it sounds glamorous.
is setting yourself up for misery and potentially financial failure. Conversely, if you crave autonomy, hate reporting structures, and have a brilliant disruptive idea, being stuck as a middle manager might stifle you completely.
So the right choice isn't universal.
Not at all. The strategically optimal choice is the one that gives you maximum leverage on your unique skill set, your personality, your disposition. And this is maybe even more relevant today with the rise of hybrid and remote work models.
How so?
Well, skilled entrepreneurs can now potentially find roles in large companies that offer significant autonomy, global impact, and the flexibility of remote work, blending corporate stability with a degree of freedom that wasn't always possible before. The lines are blurring a bit.
So it really boils down to, forget the title, where will your specific talents generate the maximum return, both financially and, maybe just as importantly, emotionally?
That's the strategic question PBD forces you to answer in Move 1. Know thyself, then choose thy battlefield.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've laid the foundation. We've done the hard work of Move 1, knowing ourselves, auditing ourselves, choosing our path. Now, PBD says, okay, take that self-knowledge and apply it to maybe the single biggest challenge in business.
Making decisions.
Yes,
Especially tough ones.
exactly. Making reliable, high-stakes decisions, often under intense pressure and uncertainty. That critical transition brings us squarely into move two. Master the ability to reason.
And move two kicks off by throwing us right into the deep end. Chaos management, essentially. PBD doesn't shy away from the reality of business pitfalls, setbacks, crises are inevitable.
They're going to happen.
They are absolutely going to happen. But the pivotal moment, the strategic difference, isn't about somehow avoiding failure altogether. That's impossible. It's about learning how to process those failures, how to truly own every single setback, every issue as a potential stepping stone, not a roadblock.
And the emotional trap here, the default human reaction, is usually to externalize blame, isn't it?
Oh, completely. It was the economy's fault. Our competitor made an unfair move. The team didn't execute. That supplier let us down. It's always easier to point fingers outward.
But that doesn't help you get better.
It does the opposite. It guarantees you'll make similar mistakes again. The strategic advantage, PBD insists, comes from forcing yourself to internalize the lesson, even if the primary cause was external, like a sudden market crash or a new regulation.
You still have to ask, how did our system, our preparation, our response fail?
Precisely. What could we have done differently? Now, how does PBD make this more than just, generic self-help advice like learn from your mistakes?
Yeah, how does he formalize it?
He pushes for a specific methodology of deliberate reflection. He wants you to treat issue processing like a formal business process, a structured review, almost like a postmortem, but for every significant issue, not just catastrophic failures.
So what does that review look like?
You systematically break it down. What were the variables we actually controlled? What assumptions did we make going in that turned out to be false? What blind spots did we have? Crucially, what structural defects or weaknesses in our own operation were exposed when this external pressure hit?
Oof. That requires brutal honesty.
Brutal honesty. You have to systematically dissect the failure, not to assign blame, but to understand the root causes within your control to prevent it from happening again. And just as importantly, PBD says you must use the data, the insights generated by the crisis itself, to actually fuel future growth and innovation.
Okay, that kind of leadership, that ability to process issues under fire, gets intensely tested during major economic shifts, like
Yeah.
the recent inflation spikes we saw here in the U.S.
Oh, that was a perfect stress test.
Rising costs for everything, materials, labor, energy, just eroded margins almost overnight for so many businesses.
And we saw some truly phenomenal strategic pivots from companies whose leaders had mastered this processing issues muscle. Let's consider, say, a successful U.S. regional bakery chain, or maybe a small-scale specialty food manufacturer.
Okay.
When the cost of their core ingredients, flour, sugar, cooking oil, packaging, logistics, suddenly exploded by 30, 40, even 50% or more.
Their whole model was threatened.
Instantly.
Right.
Now, the unsuccessful companies, the ones who couldn't process the issue effectively, they did one of two things, generally. They either just blindly passed the entire cost increase onto their customers.
And risk alienating them or losing volume.
Right. Or they tried to absorb the cost, hit themselves, hoping it was temporary, and just bled cash until they maybe had to fold or drastically cut quality.
Okay, so what did the successful ones do?
The ones who processed it strategically used that crisis, that external shock, as a forcing function, an opportunity for serious internal streamlining and innovation they might have put off otherwise.
How? What kind of changes?
Maybe they conducted a
They processed the issue. The external shock of inflation owned the new constraints and fundamentally adapted their operation to become leaner, maybe more focused, and definitely more resilient going forward.
Precisely. The crisis forced them to shed operational fat and eliminate inefficiencies they hadn't even fully realized were there during the good times. They didn't just recover, they evolved.
So the strategic goal isn't just bouncing back to where you were, it's using the crisis as raw material for forced innovation and permanent operational upgrades.
That's the power of processing issues effectively, according to PBD. It turns defense into offense.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update. All right, so if Chapter 4 sets the mindset, own your issues, learn from them, then Chapter 5 gives you the actual blueprint, the toolkit. PBD calls it How to Solve for X.
Yeah, this is where he gets very practical, very methodological.
And this is the point where PBD really assures you, the listener, the reader, that you can move beyond just guessing or relying purely on gut instinct when making big decisions. He claims you can actually start to master predicting outcomes.
Which Which sounds like a huge claim, right? Mastering prediction.
It does. So the critical question is, how is this Solve for X framework really different from just plain old common sense problem solving? Everyone tries to think through problems. What makes this special?
That's the million-dollar question, and I think the difference lies in the discipline it imposes on common sense. It's not just thinking. It's a systematic tool designed to flip that feeling of confusion or overwhelm into clarity and confidence.
How does it do that? What's the system?
It forces you, first and foremost, to define the problem, the X, with absolute clarity. What exactly are you trying to solve for? Not vaguely, but specifically. Then, critically, it requires you to identify and weigh all the relevant variables.
The constraints, the opportunities, the risks.
All of it, and assign weights to them based on importance or probability. Then, you have to logically map out multiple potential scenarios or solutions, not just your preferred one, but several distinct paths.
Think carefully.
Crucially, it forces you to define what success actually looks like for each scenario, in measurable terms, before you commit to action. What are the specific outcomes or metrics that will tell you if you've successfully solved for X?
Okay, so the confidence it builds isn't just wishful thinking.
No, it's not arbitrary optimism. It's confidence earned through the rigor of that systematic reasoning and structured analysis. You feel more confident because you've done the work, you've stress-tested your assumptions, you've anticipated potential roadblocks.
And this kind of systematization, this structured approach to decision-making, it feels like it's rapidly converging with modern technology, doesn't it? We're sitting here in 2025, and AI is fundamentally reshaping strategic planning in so many fields.
Absolutely. The timing is perfect.
So how does PBD's somewhat more analog framework, Solve for X, translate into this AI-driven environment? Does it become obsolete?
I don't think it becomes obsolete at all. I think it becomes the essential human overlay for the machine. It's the framework that guides the AI and makes its output truly useful.
How does that work in practice? Give us an example.
Okay, let's take a large-scale U.S. logistics provider. Think FedEx, UPS, or a major trucking company. They're constantly struggling with complex optimization problems, seasonal shifts in demand, optimal routing for thousands of vehicles, staffing levels across hundreds of hubs, massive complexity.
Yeah, a nightmare to calculate manually.
Exactly. So now they can use powerful predictive AI to run literally millions of simulations, testing different routes, schedules, staffing models, predicting fuel costs, weather delays, you name it. The AI can find mathematically optimal solutions we could never dream of finding before.
Okay, so where does Solve for X fit in?
The human leader uses the Solve for X methodology to structure the input for the AI and to interpret its output. First, the leader defines the objective function with crystal clarity. X equals maximizing on-time delivery percentage while maintaining an average profit margin of at least 15% per shipment and keeping driver turnover below 8%.
So defining the X precisely for the AI.
Precisely. Then, they define the non-negotiable constraints, the boundary conditions for the AI based on the company's principles or realities. We must adhere to all federal and state regulations on driver hours. We must honor existing union contracts. We cannot use routes that compromise driver safety, even if they're faster.
Setting the rules of the game.
Exactly. The AI then crunches the petabytes of data within those parameters, but it's the PBD framework that ensures the resulting optimal solution from the AI is actually actionable, strategically aligned with the company's broader goals and values, and operationally feasible given their real-world limits.
So the framework prevents the AI from just optimizing for one narrow variable like speed in a way that might violate deeper business principles or create unintended negative consequences like burning out drivers.
Perfectly said. The systematic framework makes the fire hose of AI data genuinely useful. It reduces the uncertainty, allows the leader to understand the trade-offs presented by the AI, and gives them the confidence to commit potentially massive resources, buying new trucks, hiring hundreds of people, changing major routes based on the optimal predicted outcome generated within that structured process.
So it's disciplined prediction, enabled by tech, but guided by human reason and values. That's crucial.
That's the synergy. The framework elevates the human from just reacting to data to strategically directing the analysis.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update.
Oh.
All right, we've grounded ourselves in identity, move 1. We've sharpened our decision-making tools, move 2. Now, PBD says it's time to move outward. Because we can't scale, you can't dominate, you can't achieve those huge visions.
All by yourself.
Exactly, it's impossible. So move 3 is all about master building the right team. This is that strategic recognition that collaboration, leveraging the talents of others, is the only path to truly exponential growth and lasting impact.
And PBD kicks the section off by immediately forcefully debunking that pervasive illusion of the solo hero, a lone genius founder changing the world from their garage.
Yeah, the myth of the solopreneur. It's appealing, but
It's mostly a myth, especially when you talk about significant scale. He makes the point very clearly. Your growth, your revenue potential, your overall influence, it is always capped by your own individual capacity, your time, your energy, your skill set. There's a hard ceiling.
so how do you break through that ceiling?
Through leverage, specifically leveraging other people's talents. The turning point, the real mindset shift here is that almost thrilling realization that by surrounding yourself with people who are inherently smarter, more skilled, more capable than you are in their specific domains,
Your capacity suddenly becomes, well, almost limitless, or at least vastly expanded.
it becomes multiplied. Your potential is no longer constrained by your limitations, but amplified by the collective strengths of the team you build.
Okay, that makes sense conceptually, but practically speaking, especially right now, in today's, let's face it, incredibly tight and specialized labor market.
It's tough out there.
Yeah. And add in the complexity of managing global talent, remote-first workplaces becoming the norm. Attracting, and maybe even harder, retaining those top players feels more challenging than ever. What's the strategic approach PBD advocates?
Well, the strategy has to adapt to that new reality. The focus shifts. It's less about just competing for talent in your immediate local vicinity,
The old way.
the old way, and more about competing on global competence and, critically, on the strength and appeal of your organizational culture. You have to build a place where the best want to be, regardless of geography.
Let's look at a U.S. example here. How does this play out?
Okay, think about a successful software company based in, say, San Francisco or Austin. A super high-cost, hyper-competitive market for tech talent.
Right. Salaries are astronomical, poaching is constant.
Exactly. Now, instead of just getting into endless bidding wars for the same pool of local engineers, a strategically savvy company might have adopted a radical remote-first or remote-flexible policy early.
So decoupling talent from location.
Completely. This move immediately widens their talent pool from, say, a 50-mile radius to the entire globe. Suddenly, they can tap into specialized talent pools that their geographically constrained competitors can't reach.
Like where?
Maybe they find incredible AI engineers in Eastern Europe, brilliant data scientists in India or Southeast Asia, amazing UX UI designers in South America. The strategic breakthrough isn't just potential cost savings, though that can be a factor.
What is it then?
It's accessing unique expertise and fundamentally diverse perspectives that the more homogeneous, localized competitors might be missing entirely. That diversity of thought can lead to unexpected innovation and better problem solving.
Okay, but that sounds operationally complex to manage.
Oh, it absolutely is, and PBD would emphasize that. Making remote-first work at scale requires highly sophisticated systems and processes for cross-cultural communication, for managing asynchronous workflows across multiple time zones, for building and maintaining team cohesion and trust when people rarely meet face-to-face.
So you're not just hiring talent anymore.
You're not just hiring talent, you're consciously designing and managing a complex global operational integration. It's a much bigger strategic lift, but the payoff can be immense.
So when you do it right, you're not just building a team, you're assembling this strategically superior, globally distributed brain trust.
Yeah, like a collective intelligence.
That elevates the entire organizational IQ. That feels like the real strategic high of collaboration PBD is aiming for.
That's the leverage he's talking about. Moving beyond your own limits by building something bigger than yourself.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update.
Okay, so you followed Chapter 6. You've maybe broadened your horizons. You've managed to attract some of this top-tier, maybe even global talent. Now, the critical question becomes, how do you keep this potentially diverse, geographically distributed team aligned? How do you ensure they're all pulling in the same direction, making consistent decisions without you having to constantly micromanage every little thing?
Yeah, that's the scaling challenge for leadership, isn't it? You can't be everywhere.
You absolutely can't. And PBD's answer, his core strategy for achieving the scalable alignment, is to build a truly principles-based culture.
Okay. Principles-based culture. We hear phrases like that a lot. Company values, mission statements. Sometimes they feel a bit fluffy, like posters on the wall that don't really mean much day to day.
That's the danger, right? That they become just corporate jargon. PDD is adamant that real principles are the opposite of fluffy. They are the unbreakable, non-negotiable foundations upon which the entire organization operates. They are hard-edged.
So we need to dig deeper then. What does a non-negotiable principle actually look like in practice? How does it go beyond an abstract concept like, say, we value integrity? How do these principles translate into actual, tangible, daily strategic wins?
Great question. They function primarily as decision filters. A truly embedded, principles-based culture defines the clear boundaries of acceptable and unacceptable action for everyone in the organization, from the CEO down to the intern.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say a company establishes a core, non-negotiable principle like, we always operate with radical transparency, both internally and externally, unless specifically constrained by law or contractual confidentiality.
So like radical transparency.
Now, that principle isn't just a nice sentiment. It immediately clarifies how an employee should handle dozens of potential situations without needing to escalate or ask for permission, like how they respond to a customer complaint about a product flaw. The principle dictates: be transparent, admit the issue, explain how we're fixing it, or how they share internal data about project setbacks. Principle dictates: share it openly with the relevant teams, don't hide bad news. It governs what PBD might distinguish between two-way deal decisions, ones that are easily reversible.
Like testing a new marketing headline.
Exactly. Versus one-way door decisions, ones that are very hard or impossible to undo.
Like launching a major new product line or making a large acquisition.
Right. The principles provide the guardrails, especially for those critical one-way door decisions. And the emotional peak, the real power PBD talks about, comes when employees know instinctively, without having to consult a manual or ask their manager every time, which actions and decisions are aligned with the company's core moral compass and strategic direction.
And that creates speed, right? Less checking, less hesitation.
Incredible internal speed and consistency. It empowers distributed decision-making while ensuring alignment.
Okay, let's apply this. Think about a U.S. company navigating the really complex cultural shifts we're seeing in the mid-2020s. Maybe they're facing pressure around controversial social or political issues. How does a strong, principles-based culture provide resilience in that kind of environment?
This is where it really gets tested. Let's analyze a highly visible, perhaps mission-driven U.S. company, maybe an outdoor gear retailer that's also a certified B Corp, right? So their founding principles likely emphasize things like environmental sustainability, ethical supply chains, maybe social justice causes.
Okay, got it.
Now imagine a major social or political controversy erupts that touches on one of their core areas. Or maybe one of their major long-term suppliers gets publicly exposed for having terrible labor practices or a huge environmental violation.
A PR nightmare, potentially.
Yeah. Huge nightmare. But if the company has genuinely embedded non-negotiable principles, those principles act as an internal guidepost. They dictate the response, often removing ambiguity. If a core principle is, we only partner with suppliers who meet stringent ethical and environmental standards, then the discovery of a violation by a major vendor triggers an almost predetermined response.
Which it might be.
It might dictate an immediate public severance of that supplier relationship, even if that decision causes significant short-term financial pain or supply chain disruption, because the principle is non-negotiable.
Wow. So the principle overrides the short-term P&L.
In a truly principles-based culture, yes. And that consistency, that willingness to take a hit for your principles, does several things strategically. It prevents debilitating internal discord among employees who are drawn to the company because of those values. It clarifies the company's position instantly to the external market. And, perhaps most importantly, it reinforces deep trust among both employees and their target consumers who often share those same values.
So the principles aren't liabilities in tough times. They're actually strategic decision-making tools that protect the long-term brand integrity and stakeholder alignment.
Exactly. PBD argues that principles, therefore, aren't really about soft idealism. They're about hard-nosed, long-term strategic integrity, often demanding choices that prioritize that integrity over short-term financial expediency. That's how you build something that lasts.
Like, subscribe, and share for more updates. Okay, this next chapter presents a beautifully concise, almost mathematical strategic equation. Trust, speed.
Yeah, it's powerful in its simplicity, isn't it?
It really is. PBD argues here that building these absolute bonds of trust within your team, with your partners, even with your customers, isn't just a nice to have. It's the fundamental key to achieving light and fast execution and decision-making.
He positions reliability not just as a virtue, but as a critical, hard strategic asset.
So why? Why is trust, or maybe more accurately, perceived reliability, such a potent accelerator? How does it translate directly into speed?
Because fundamentally, trust works by reducing organizational friction down to almost zero. Think about all the things that slow organizations down.
Okay, like what? Bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy, endless meetings, layers of approvals, CYA emails, excessive documentation, constant cross-checking and verification of other people's work, all that stuff.
Right, the daily grind that kills productivity.
Exactly. Now, what's the underlying root cause of most of that friction?
Lack of trust.
Here you go. It's a lack of implicit trust in your colleagues' competence, in their ethical behavior, in their reliability to simply do what they say they're going to do when they say they'll do it to the standard required.
So when that trust is present,
When you have high trust, you implicitly believe your colleague has the skills, the integrity, and the commitment. You don't need to constantly verify. You eliminate those massive overhead costs associated with that lack of trust.
the checking, the validating, the endless sign-offs.
Gone or vastly reduced. And what does that enable? It enables instantaneous decision-making and rapid execution. Ideas can move from concept to action incredibly quickly because the usual roadblocks of mistrust and verification aren't there. That speed becomes an exponential competitive advantage, especially in fast-moving markets.
And the flip side is true too, right? The cost of low trust.
Oh, the cost is immense. PBD would argue low-trust environments are characterized by paralyzed decision cycles. Nobody wants to stick their neck out. Excessive defensive documentation becomes the norm. Internal politics and turf wars flourish. Collaboration breaks down. Opportunities are constantly missed because the organization is just too slow and cumbersome to react. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts, fueled by mistrust.
Okay, let's make this real. Where do we see this trust equals speed phenomenon most clearly demonstrated in high-pressure U.S. industries? Where does that absolute reliance pay off?
I think you see it intensely in certain teams within the financial trading sector,
Sure.
especially things like high-frequency trading desks or proprietary trading groups maybe in New York or Chicago,
Why there specifically?
because in those arenas, literally milliseconds can be the difference between making millions on an arbitrage opportunity or losing millions. The speed required is phenomenal.
There's no time for committee meetings.
Absolutely zero time. If a trader identifies a complex derivative opportunity but needs to get 3 levels of verification, write a detailed memo and wait for sign-offs before executing.
The opportunity is long gone, evaporated.
Instantly. So on those elite, high-performing teams, there has to be absolute, ingrained, almost unquestioning trust. The trader has to trust the risk manager's parameters implicitly. They have to trust the quant's models. They have to trust the technical analysis provided. They have to trust the execution platform won't fail. And leadership has to trust the trader's judgment within those defined boundaries.
It's like a relay race at warp speed.
Exactly. That shared, proven reliability, the deep knowledge that everyone on the team will perform their specific role flawlessly and instantly when called upon, is the invisible high-octane fuel. It allows the team to make rapid, complex, high-stakes decisions that completely outpace slower, more bureaucratic, lower-trust competitors. That trust is their strategic velocity. It's how they capture market inefficiencies before anyone else even sees them.
So trust isn't just a soft skill, a cultural nice to have. PSD positions it as a critical, measurable factor in your organization's reaction time, its agility, and ultimately its ability to identify and monetize opportunities faster than the competition.
It's a core component of your strategic capability. You build trust deliberately, you protect it fiercely, because it directly translates to speed and performance.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update. All right, we're moving into the next phase. We've built the internal foundation with moves 1, 2, and 3, self-knowledge, reasoning, team building. Now, PBD shifts the focus outward towards expansion, growth, but also protection.
Yeah, this is where the ambition really starts to manifest externally.
This is move 4, master strategy to scale. And the pivot moment here, the core challenge he identifies, seems crucial. How do you actually embrace the intense demands of rapid growth without allowing your operation, your team, your very culture to crumble under the weight of its own success?
That's the tightrope walk of scaling, isn't it? Success can be as dangerous as failure if you're not prepared for it.
And PBD argues that this is where most organizations, even promising ones, actually fail. They hit a growth spurt and things just fall apart.
They do, because there's a common flawed assumption about scaling. People often think scaling just means doing more of the same, hire more salespeople, rent a bigger office, spend more on marketing.
Just turning up the volume.
Right. But PBD clarifies, especially when you're talking about exponential growth, not just incremental growth, that approach is doomed. True scaling requires fundamentally redesigning the entire structure. It demands building exponential infrastructure to support that exponential growth.
And what does he mean by infrastructure here? Not just physical buildings, right?
No, much broader. He's talking about infrastructure in 3 key areas. Your people. Do you have the leadership depth? Are roles clearly defined for scale?
Yeah.
Your processes. Are your workflows, communication channels, decision-making protocols designed to handle 10x or 100x the volume efficiently? And maybe most critically today, your technology.
Yeah, the tech stack.
Absolutely. If your core systems, your software, your data management, your communication tools are optimized for managing, say, a regional market with a few hundred customers, PBD warns they will simply implode. They'll break down completely when faced with the demands of a national or global market with tens of thousands of customers. The old infrastructure cannot handle the new load.
Okay, so given the incredible pace of digital transformation we've seen, it's especially accelerated by everything post-2020, what kind of technological infrastructure actually enables this sort of exponential scaling PBD is talking about?
Well, the dominant answer today has to be modern cloud infrastructure. Almost by definition, it's built for elasticity.
Let's use a U.S. example again.
Okay, let's take a hypothetical regional e-commerce food delivery service. Maybe they started in 1 or 2 cities, built a loyal following, things are going well.
Right. Manageable scale.
Manageable scale. Their original infrastructure might have been based on, a few localized servers in a data center, maybe some off-the-shelf logistics software, perhaps a lot of manual inventory checks and order processing. It worked fine for their initial size.
But now they see the opportunity to go national. Huge potential growth.
Exactly. Exponential growth potential. To handle that, they can't just buy more servers and hire more people to do the same manual tasks. They need a fundamentally different architecture.
So what's the scalable solution?
They'd almost certainly need to migrate core functions to a major cloud platform, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. Why? Because cloud offers elasticity. It's a pay-as-you-go model where their computing power, their database capacity, their network bandwidth can spike almost instantaneously to meet peak demand like a Friday night dinner rush across multiple time zones and then automatically contract during slower periods. They only pay for what they use, but the capacity is virtually unlimited.
So the infrastructure scales with the demand instead of breaking under it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But it's not just the cloud hosting. They'd also likely need to invest heavily in automated fulfillment technology. Maybe that means optimized warehouse robotics if they handle inventory, definitely AI-driven route mapping and dispatch systems for their drivers, automated customer service bots for common inquiries.
Taking the human bottleneck out where possible.
Removing bottlenecks and building systems designed for massive volume from the outset. The key strategic insight here, PBD would argue, is making these significant investments in scalable systems, the cloud migration, the automation, the process redesign before the massive growth actually hits. You build the capacity ahead of the demand.
You have to anticipate.
You anticipate. By demonstrating that capability first, they prove they can actually handle exponential demand without degrading the customer experience, without delivery times ballooning or orders getting messed up. That capability itself becomes a strategic asset, allowing them to confidently pursue rapid market capture.
So the lesson is, you have to build the machine capable of handling the absolute maximum potential load, even when you're currently only operating at a fraction of that. That foresight is what prevents the growth you desperately want from becoming the very thing that kills you.
That's the essence of strategic scaling. Prepare for the flood before the rain starts.
Like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
Okay, so you've built the scalable infrastructure. Things are starting to take off. You're experiencing that thrilling feeling of momentum. Sales are climbing, the team is energized, the market is responding.
It's an intoxicating feeling, right?
Yeah.
Success feels good.
It feels fantastic. It's addictive, even. But PBD throws in a crucial warning right here. Success, especially rapid success, fueled by momentum, inevitably breeds new, often more complex problems. Chaos is coming.
So this chapter isn't just about enjoying the ride.
Not at all. It's about active momentum management. It's about developing the strategic wisdom to know exactly when to pour fuel on the fire and accelerate hard, maybe to capitalize on a fleeting market trend, or solidify a first-mover advantage.
Pressing your advantage when you have it.
Exactly. But just as importantly, it's about knowing when to strategically tap the brakes, maybe consolidate your gains, stabilize the operation, fix the internal processes that are inevitably straining under the pressure.
And actively prepare for the turbulence, the chaos, that PBD says is guaranteed to follow any period of rapid ascent.
Guaranteed. It's not if chaos will hit, it's when and how. And that focus on deliberate chaos readiness is what separates companies that achieve enduring, sustainable scale from those that experience a brief, bright flash of success followed by implosion.
We see this dynamic play out so clearly in really volatile, fast-moving sectors, don't we?
Yeah.
Where speed and capturing trends are absolutely
Oh,
paramount.
absolutely. Think about the world of social media platforms, or high-trend consumer tech gadgets, or even viral entertainment phenomena. Speed is everything.
Yeah, capturing lightning in a bottle.
Right. Let's imagine a fast-moving social media platform. Maybe they launch a new feature, a new video format, a new filter, whatever, and it just explodes. It goes insanely viral. Users flock to it, engagement skyrockets. That's the momentum phase. They're riding a massive wave.
I got to capitalize on that, right? Push it hard.
They absolutely do. They need to accelerate, promote it, enhance it, make sure the servers can handle the load. But PBD's lesson here insists that the truly strategic leadership team, even while celebrating that viral success, must simultaneously be activating their chaos readiness contingency plans.
Okay, what does chaos readiness look like in that scenario?
Well, what kind of chaos does sudden, massive viral success attract?
Okay, server overload? The platform crashes.
Definitely. Technical infrastructure strain is chaos number one. What else?
Negative attention. Media scrutiny. Maybe regulators start asking questions about privacy or content.
Bingo. Regulatory scrutiny, brand safety issues, content moderation nightmares are almost inevitable when something gets huge fast. What about users?
Backlash. People finding ways to abuse the new feature. Or just getting bored quickly.
Exactly. User backlash, unpredictable user behavior, the feature becoming uncool just as quickly as it got popular. So chaos readiness means having pre-planned responses for all of that before it happens.
The concrete examples.
It means having an immediate, well-briefed legal and PR response strategy ready to deploy the moment regulators call or a negative news cycle hits. It means having a significantly scaled up, potentially AI-assisted content moderation team already trained and on standby to handle the wave of problematic content or user behavior that will come with viral scale. It means having already architected their technical infrastructure with enough redundancy and scalability to handle load spikes, maybe 10x or 100x their previous peak, before the virality hits.
Wow. So they're planning for the potential downsides even as they're enjoying the upside.
That's precisely it. They ride the wave of momentum for all it's worth, accelerating where possible. But they are fully armored, metaphorically speaking. They have pre-built fire breaks, pre-planned mitigation strategies, ready to execute the instant the inevitable market turbulence, regulatory storm, or user backlash begins.
So momentum might get you that initial market share or user growth, but it's the chaos readiness that ensures you can actually stabilize, defend that share, and survive the inevitable counterpunches when the initial hype fades or the problems start stacking up.
You have to plan for the worst-case scenarios during the best of times. That's how you make momentum a sustainable friend, not just a fleeting acquaintance that leaves you wrecked.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update. Okay, we're still in Move 4, strategy to scale. We've talked about building scalable infrastructure and managing momentum with chaos readiness. Now, PBD forces us to get really hard-nosed and quantitative. He calls this chapter Moneyball.
Yeah, borrowing from the baseball analytics revolution is a great analogy.
It is, and the core idea is forcing us to look beyond just gut feelings, anecdotes, or surface-level impressions of how the business is doing. He wants us to view data specifically, the right metrics, as our secret weapon, our source of true competitive advantage.
It's about making strategy data-driven, not just intuition-driven.
And the key strategic pivot here, the shift he demands, is moving away from what he calls vanity metrics.
The ones that make you feel good, but don't really tell you much.
Right, like maybe total website hits or number of social media followers, or even just gross revenue sometimes. They boost morale, they look good in a superficial presentation.
But they don't necessarily correlate with actual health or profitability.
Exactly. PBD insists we move towards designing systems to track truly actionable metrics, the ones that actually drive efficiency, reveal hidden problems, and inform critical strategic decisions.
So what's the difference? What makes a metric actionable versus vanity?
Vanity metrics, like we said, total website hits, Maybe app downloads, number of
Yeah.
registered users, gross revenue. They're often big numbers, easy to track, look impressive.
Okay, so what are the actionable ones? Actionable metrics are usually more complex, often ratios or calculations that reveal deeper truths about the business model's health. Things like customer lifetime value, or CLV, how much profit does an average customer generate over their entire relationship with you?
Okay, that's important.
Crucial. Or customer acquisition cost. How much does it actually cost you on average to acquire a new paying customer? And importantly, segmenting that CAC by channel. Are your Google ads more efficient than your Facebook ads?
Knowing where your marketing dollars work best.
Precisely. Other examples. True client profitability, not just revenue per client, but profit margin per client after accounting for all the time and resources they consume. Staff output efficiency, are certain teams or processes consistently more productive? Churn rate, how quickly are you losing customers? Conversion rates at each stage of your sales funnel. PBD insists that if you aren't rigorously tracking these kinds of metrics, the real drivers of your business,
You're basically flying blind, regardless of how high your gross revenue might be.
you're flying blind, making decisions based on gut feel or incomplete information. You might be celebrating revenue growth while your profitability is actually collapsing, or pouring marketing money into channels that don't deliver valuable customer.
And this kind of sophisticated analytics, this data revolution, it's no longer just the domain of giant Fortune 500 corporations with huge data science teams, is it?
Not at all. That's a key point for today. The tools and the know-how are becoming much more accessible. Small and medium-sized businesses right here in the US are increasingly leveraging surprisingly sophisticated analytics to punch way above their weight.
Can you give an example of how a smaller U.S. firm might use this Moneyball approach?
Sure. Let's take a small, specialized U.S. professional services firm, maybe a niche legal practice focusing on intellectual property, or a high-end boutique accounting firm specializing in tech startups.
Okay. Traditionally, how would they measure success?
Traditionally, their main metrics would probably be pretty simple.
Hmm.
Total billable hours logged, maybe total revenue collected, perhaps the number of active clients, kind of vanity-ish.
Right.
Now, let's say they adopt a PBD Moneyball mindset. They invest in better time tracking software, maybe connect it to their project management and billing systems. They start rigorously tracking not just hours per client, but the true profitability of each client relationship.
So revenue generated by client A minus the actual cost of this specific lawyer's or accountant's time spent on client A plus allocated overhead.
Exactly. They calculate a profit margin per client, maybe even segment it by the type of work done for that client, and what might they discover?
They might find some surprises.
Very likely. They might discover that, say, 20% of their clients, maybe even some of the ones who pay the highest total fees, actually require 80% of the senior partner's time and generate the lowest profit margin due to the complexity of their issues, constant demands, scope creep, whatever.
No, the squeaky wheels aren't always the most profitable.
Often they're the least profitable. Now, that is actionable data. What can the firm do with that insight?
Well, they could make some tough decisions, maybe strategically fire those high-maintenance, low-profit clients, or at least renegotiate their fees or service levels drastically.
Right. And they can then reallocate their best resources, their senior partner's time, away from servicing those drains and towards acquiring and serving more clients who fit the profile of their most profitable segment. They can also use the data to refine their marketing, specifically targeting prospects who look like their ideal high-margin clients.
So purely by having better internal data, this small firm can dramatically increase its overall profitability and efficiency, potentially outperforming larger, less data-savvy competitors who are still just chasing gross billables.
That's the Moneyball advantage in action. The data isn't just about measurement. PBD frames it as critical internal competitive intelligence that dictates where you must focus your single most valuable and finite resource, your team's time and attention.
Like, subscribe, and share for more updates. We're nearing the end of Move 4, Strategy to Scale, and PBD concludes it with a chapter title that sounds, well, pretty intense, Tape Paranoid.
Yeah, it's definitely meant to jolt you. The Grandmaster never lets his guard down.
It doesn't sound like a very relaxing state to be in. Is he literally advocating for constant anxiety?
I don't think it's about crippling anxiety. It's about vigilant foresight. It's a strategic mindset. PBD's core warning here is that success, especially sustained success, inevitably breeds the most dangerous disease in business: complacency.
Believing your own hype? Thinking you've got it all figured out?
Exactly. Getting comfortable. Assuming that what worked yesterday will work tomorrow. And PBD argues, quite forcefully, that complacency kills. especially in today's environment of rapid technological disruption, shifting consumer behaviors, and unpredictable global events.
The moment you relax your guard, someone or something is coming for your lunch.
That's the essence of the paranoia. It's not neurotic fear. It's a state of ongoing awareness, a constant, healthy skepticism about your own success, and a relentless scanning of the horizon for potential threats and disruptions before they strike.
And the emotional state he seems to be advocating for isn't fear, but maybe heightened alertness, the opposite of complacency.
Precisely. The emotional high shouldn't just come from current profits. It should also come from the satisfaction of anticipating and preparing for the next disruption. PBD believes the truly strategic leader must constantly challenge the core assumptions underpinning their current business model. Ask the hard questions. Will this still be viable in 5 years? What could make us obsolete overnight?
And this vigilant foresight, this paranoia, connects directly to the kinds of disruptions we're seeing accelerate right now in 2025, doesn't it?
Oh, massively. Think about the impact of advanced AI and automation across almost every industry, from creative work to customer service to logistics to coding. AI is forcing companies to fundamentally rethink their value propositions, their cost structures, their labor needs.
If you're not paranoid about how AI could disrupt your specific niche,
You're already behind. You need to be actively exploring. How can we leverage this technology to improve our offerings or efficiency? And just as importantly, how could a competitor, maybe even a startup we haven't heard of yet, use this technology to completely undercut our current advantages?
that constant questioning seems key.
It is. And PBD argues this paranoia needs to be institutionalized. It can't just be the CEO worrying. It requires building internal checks and balances, fostering a culture where constructive skepticism is actually welcomed, even during periods of great success.
We only have to look at the history books, especially recent U.S. business history, to see devastating examples of companies that failed this test, right? Companies that were once dominant but got blindsided because they weren't paranoid enough.
Absolutely. They serve as perfect cautionary negative case studies. Think about the historical decline of some major legacy U.S. print media empires.
Yeah.
Or iconic retail chains like Sears, Kmart, or maybe Blockbuster Video.
Yeah, giants in their day. What went wrong through PBD's lens?
They failed, generally speaking, not because their leaders were incompetent in managing the existing business. They were often very good at optimizing the status quo. They failed because they were strategically complacent. They weren't paranoid enough about the future.
They assumed their dominance was permanent.
They fundamentally assumed that their existing market moat, maybe their vast network of physical stores, their brand recognition, their high barriers to entry for traditional competitors, their legacy relationships was impenetrable and would last forever. They saw the internet coming, they saw digital transformation happening.
But they didn't react fast enough or decisively enough.
They failed to invest seriously, strategically, and early enough in digital transformation. They failed to fundamentally question the long-term viability of their core revenue streams in the face of these new models. They weren't willing to disrupt themselves.
So what's PBD's antidote to that kind of institutional complacency? How do you force paranoia?
One concrete tactic he suggests, and others practice, is actively cultivating internal skepticism. For example, establishing formal red teams or internal challenger groups.
This is their job.
Their sole job, their explicit mandate, is to think like the enemy, to figure out how to disrupt, attack, and ultimately destroy the company's current core business model, its main cash cows. They have to design the product, the service, the strategy that could put the mothership out of business.
Wow. Actively trying to kill your own golden goose.
It sounds counterintuitive, but it's strategically vital. It forces the organization to confront its own vulnerabilities head-on. It ensures the grandmaster is always thinking about the opponent's best possible countermove, anticipating threats before they fully materialize externally, even if the most dangerous opponent turns out to be your own future, more agile self.
So the chilling takeaway from Move 4 is the moment you feel secure, the moment you stop questioning everything, is the moment you have strategically conceded your future. Never mistake current success for permanent security.
That's the healthy paranoia. PBD insists is essential for long-term survival and dominance. Keep scanning the board.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update. Okay, we've arrived at the final and perhaps most intense of the 5 strategic pillars in PBD's framework. Move 5. Master power plays.
Yeah, this is where it gets into the brass tacks of influence, negotiation, and sustaining dominance over the long haul.
We've built the foundation, honed our reasoning, assembled the team. scale the operation. Now, PBD seems to be saying you need to master the strategic art of wielding influence, controlling narratives, winning tough negotiations, and ensuring your position endures. It's not just about gaining power.
It's about mastering how to keep it and use it effectively. And the first power play he dissects is a classic one. How does the underdog, the David, actually beat the established giant, the Goliath? He argues it's often about flipping the perceived disadvantage into a guaranteed path to victory.
Okay, but how? Goliath usually has all the resources, the market share, the brand recognition. How does David possibly guarantee victory?
The turning point, PBD suggests, is recognizing and ruthlessly exploiting Goliath's weaknesses. What are the typical weaknesses of a huge, established incumbent?
Well, they're often slow, right? Bureaucratic, resistant to change.
Exactly. Slow, bureaucratic, often burdened by legacy systems and processes, heavily invested in protecting the status quo, may be seen as impersonal or out of touch. The scrappy challenger's strategic advantage lies in exploiting that rigidity. Their power comes from being nimble, fast, maybe more authentic,
And
crucially, by aggressively seizing control of the narrative, shaping how the battle is perceived.
okay, let's translate that. How does a smaller, scrappy U.S. challenger effectively wield narrative control to start toppling a massive, established player in their industry?
They need to focus their story, their messaging, on exposing the giant's inflexibility or their perceived ethical shortcomings. Let's take the example we touched on briefly before. A small, maybe VC-funded sustainable clothing brand going up against a huge, dominant fast fashion retailer.
Okay, the giant versus the niche player.
The giant's whole model is built on volume, low prices, rapid trend cycles, and often relies on complex, opaque global supply chains with questionable labor or environmental practices. That's their strength, but also their vulnerability.
Right.
The smaller, sustainable brand can't compete on price or volume. That would be suicide. So they don't try. Instead, they control the narrative. They position themselves as the clear, moral, and modern alternative.
How do they frame that narrative?
Their story is all about transparency. Here's exactly where our materials come from. Here's how our workers are treated. We use organic cotton, recycled materials. We have a zero-waste philosophy. They appeal directly to the growing segment of consumers who care deeply about these values.
And implicitly or explicitly, they contrast that with the giant.
Explicitly. They use the giant's operational model, its massive carbon footprint, its reliance on synthetic fabrics derived from fossil fuels, its history of factory scandals as the core of their contrasting story. They aren't just selling clothes. They're selling values, transparency, a cleaner conscience.
So they're not trying to beat Goliath on the giant's terms, volume, price.
No, they're changing the terms of the fight. They're beating Goliath on relevance. They position the giant as the outdated, ethically compromised, environmentally damaging option. They make the giant's very scale and history seem like liabilities in the eyes of the target consumer. They topple the established narrative of cheap consumerism being the only thing that matters.
It's like strategic jujitsu, isn't it?
Yeah.
Using the opponent's own weight, their established way of doing things, against them. The power isn't in resources, it's in controlling the story.
Precisely. PBD argues that in many modern battles, the most compelling narrative wins, even against overwhelming resources. That's a key power play.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update.
All right, now we get to arguably the most provocative, maybe even controversial chapter title in the book, Study Mobsters.
Yeah, that one definitely raises eyebrows. What's PBD getting at here? Is he seriously telling people to model themselves after criminals?
No, not at all. In terms of the actions or the morality, he's very clear about that. His point is more nuanced. He's arguing that if you want to understand the raw, unvarnished dynamics of power, leverage, and high-stakes negotiation under extreme pressure, studying environments where the consequences are literally life and death, like historical accounts of organized crime negotiations or geopolitical power struggles, can reveal certain fundamental truths about human psychology and influence tactics that are often masked by politeness in the corporate world.
So it's about extracting the tactics, not endorsing the context.
Exactly. He believes we can learn valuable lessons about the critical importance of things like establishing leverage, building unwavering credibility, even if it's feared credibility in that context, understanding psychological drivers, maintaining emotional control under fire, and the power of reputation.
Okay, but the crucial caveat here has to be about the ethical application of any insights gleaned from such intense, often brutal environments. How do these concepts translate into modern, legitimate business, like a boardroom negotiation?
That's the key filter. We have to take the underlying principles of influence and apply them ethically. So, what are some of the key influence tactics PBD seems to unveil, drawing parallels from these high stakes worlds that do have ethical relevance in negotiation?
What stands out?
I think a major one revolves around meticulous preparation and understanding information disparity. The side that knows more, especially about the other side's true pressures, weaknesses, and non negotiables, usually has a massive advantage.
So doing intense homework on your counterparty.
Intense homework. What are their real deadlines? Are they negotiating from a position of strength or weakness internally? Is their CEO under pressure from the board to close the specific deal by quarter end? Is there a quiet internal issue or potential scandal that makes walking away from the deal more painful for them than for you? Understanding these hidden psychological drivers and leverage points is critical.
And how does one establish credibility or authority in a tough negotiation? The PBD way.
It comes from demonstrating absolute preparation, maintaining unflappable composure even when things get heated, clearly articulating your position and your non-negotiables, and critically, establishing a believable walkaway point. The other side needs to believe you are willing to walk if your core requirements aren't met. That credibility gives you immense leverage.
Okay, let's apply this. Think about complex merger and acquisition M&A deals happening in, say, the boardrooms of major banks or law firms in New York or Chicago.
Yeah.
How might these mobster-studied principles, ethically adapted, play out?
In those high-stakes M&A negotiations, the skilled dealmaker absolutely applies these concepts. They meticulously research the target company's financials, management team, market position, but also try to understand the internal political dynamics and the personal motivations of the key negotiators across the table.
Understanding the human element.
Crucially, they work to establish clear authority and credibility from the outset, perhaps by demonstrating superior knowledge of the industry or by referencing past successful deals. They carefully control the flow of information. They strategically use external factors, maybe changing market conditions, regulatory hurdles, shareholder sentiment as leverage points to strengthen their position.
Creating pressure points.
Exactly. And they maintain strict emotional discipline, never appearing desperate to close the deal, always projecting confidence in their willingness to walk away if the terms aren't right. They understand it's a psychological game as much as a financial one. They aim to achieve outcomes that a less prepared, less psychologically attuned negotiator might deem impossible.
So, stripping away the provocative title, PBD's point seems to be, understand the fundamental, often uncomfortable realities of power, leverage, and human psychology in negotiation, whether the stakes are billion-dollar enterprises or something far grittier. Leverage is leverage. Preparation is power.
And controlling your own emotions while understanding theirs is key to wielding that power effectively and hopefully ethically.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update.
And so we arrive at the final chapter of The Final Move. This feels like the capstone, the enduring principle. It's not just about achieving success or dominance, it's about sustaining it. PBD calls it cultivate your power and stay battle-tested.
This feels like it circles back, in a way, to the stay paranoid idea, but maybe with a more proactive long-term focus.
I think that's right. Stay paranoid is about vigilance against external threats and complacency. Cultivate your power is about the ongoing internal work required to maintain your edge, your sharpness, your relevance, your ability to lead effectively over the long haul, especially amidst the kind of constant change and evolving challenges we're facing now in 2025 and beyond.
So the final enduring high isn't just reaching the summit, it's finding the discipline and the methods to stay at the summit.
Exactly. PBD stresses that gaining power, achieving that leadership position or market dominance, is really just the entry price. The much harder, more complex strategic challenge is mastering how to keep it, how to cultivate it, how to ensure it doesn't erode through neglect or arrogance.
And how do you do that? What does cultivating power and staying battle-tested actually involve day to day or year to year?
It involves a commitment to lifelong learning and adaptation. Never assuming you know everything. It means deliberately seeking out new challenges that test your assumptions and force you to grow. It means constantly honing your strategic thinking skills, staying abreast of technological shifts, understanding geopolitical trends.
Maintaining that intense intellectual and strategic sharpness you mentioned earlier.
Constantly. And it also means actively avoiding stagnation, not allowing your organization or yourself to become too comfortable, too set in its ways. You have to stay battle-tested.
This feels like the massive challenge facing so many established, successful, maybe even multi-generational U.S. companies. They've been dominant. How do they prevent that very history, that tradition, from becoming a liability? How do they keep that original founder's fire, that scrappy, innovative spirit alive after decades of success?
It's arguably the hardest leadership challenge there is. And PBD's answer, consistent with his other themes, is that they must institutionalize adaptability. They have to build mechanisms that actively challenge internal orthodoxy, that question sacred cows, that prevent tradition from calcifying into dogma.
Could you give an example of how a large, established U.S. company might do this? Maybe a big, diversified holding company that's been successful for generations.
Think about a company like Berkshire Hathaway under Buffett and Munger, or perhaps a large industrial conglomerate like GE in its heyday, though its recent history also offers cautionary tales. The natural tendency for such organizations is to become overly focused on protecting and optimizing their core legacy businesses, the historical cash cows.
Right, defend the fortress.
Defend the fortress. To stay battle-tested in the PBD sense, their leaders must resist that inward focus. They need to consistently allocate capital and attention towards exploring, experimenting with, and even funding potentially disruptive internal ventures. Sometimes these ventures might even seem paradoxical, designed specifically to compete with or eventually replace the company's own existing core businesses if market shifts demand it.
So embracing internal disruption, like Intel's historical willingness to cannibalize its own chip generations.
Exactly like that. It requires embracing that continuous cycle PBD emphasizes. Learn about new markets, new tech, test through experiments, pilot projects, small acquisitions, and apply. Scale what works, kill what doesn't, integrate the lessons learned across the broader portfolio. They have to avoid stagnation by constantly adapting their business model from within.
And constantly asking those paranoid questions.
Constantly asking, what single technological shift, competitive threat, or regulatory change could destroy our current profit margins? And how can we get there ourselves first, either by leveraging that change or developing the counter?
So sustaining dominance isn't about building higher walls around the old castle. It's about actively choosing continuous evolution, even if it's uncomfortable, over the slow, comfortable decline of stagnation. That feels like the final, ultimate move in PBD's strategic playbook.
It's the commitment to remaining a dynamic player, not becoming a static monument. That's how you stay battle-tested and cultivate power that endures.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update. #Tag7. Outro. The synthesis and final move.
Bro.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. We've gone through Patrick Bet-David's entire powerful framework, really charting that comprehensive path from deep self-definition all the way to enduring market dominance.
It's a dense framework, but incredibly logical when you lay it out.
It really is. Let's just quickly connect those 5 strategic pillars together one last time just to synthesize it for everyone listening.
Sounds good. So move 1 was the absolute foundation. Know yourself. That's about defining your identity, your purpose, your strengths, your path, intrapreneur or entrepreneur.
Right. Then move 2 built on that. Reason. This was about mastering systematic decision-making, learning how to process issues effectively, solve for X, and build resilience to chaos.
Then we moved outward with move 3, build the right team. Creating that principles-based culture, fostering unbreakable trust, because trust equals speed and leverage.
Followed by move 4, which was all about strategy to scale. Building the infrastructure for exponential growth, managing momentum while preparing for chaos, using data like Moneyball, and critically, staying paranoid to avoid complacency.
And finally, move 5 brought it all together with power plays. Mastering the art of influence, controlling the narrative, negotiating effectively, and cultivating your power to stay battle-tested for long-term endurance.
It's a complete system. And hopefully, by digging into each move like this, you, the listener, now possess a much more comprehensive framework. The goal was to give you the tools to stop just, reacting to the latest economic headline or whatever your competitor just did.
And start genuinely thinking several steps ahead, moving towards that strategic mastery PBD talks about.
Exactly. So you can be the player who is actively sculpting the future of your market, not just the piece being moved around on the board.
And remember how we started with that chess analogy, the grandmaster seeing 5 moves ahead. PBD's book essentially gives you the roadmap, the methodology for developing that foresight across these 5 key dimensions.
It does. But the ultimate challenge, maybe the final move that isn't explicitly numbered in the book, and the true measure of your strategic strength going forward. It isn't just about the moves you plan to make.
What is it then?
It's about honestly assessing the profound cost of standing still, the risk of inaction in a world that refuses to start changing.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
So here's a final question for you to really mull over, building on PBD's themes, especially that stay paranoid concept. If your current strategy, the one you're operating under today, fundamentally assumes that the world, your market, your technology, your customer, won't fundamentally change in the next, say, 12 to 24 months, if you're banking on stability.
What's the blind spot?
What is the single greatest strategic blind spot you are currently refusing to audit? What potential disruption are you choosing, consciously or unconsciously, not to confront in your pursuit of future success?
That's a question worth wrestling with. Food for thought, definitely. Thank you for joining us on this really extensive deep dive into strategic mastery.
It was great digging into this. We'll
Yeah.
catch you on the next deep dive. Goodbye, everyone.